Welcome to another writing workshop, a writing lesson with the Creative Writing Meetup in AltspaceVR. You can find out all kinds of information on what we do as we write in the real world and we share in VR at discord.me/writingvr. And you can find some great articles at writersinthegrove.com. This writing workshop we did just today was focused on challenging preconceptions. And before I get going with this, remember, we're talking about characters, not each other. And it's important when you write to take into consideration what are the preconceptions that you bring and what preconceptions, some assumptions, presumptions, and judgments that you bring to your characters. And what do the characters have as you are working with developing these characters, because we have a lot of stereotypes in our world. We have a lot of judgment calls that people make, and our characters make them as well. They come to the story with presumptions, assumptions, and judgments, and we needed to talk about those. So we created a really safe space in Altspace so that we could talk about these without targeting individuals, but actually working with characters, character stereotypes, and typecasting. Sometimes we lock a character down and we keep the character confined to only a particular belief system or only a specific attitude. And I wanted to explore how we can really pay attention to these, because we inject them into our writing as well as our characters inject these beliefs in as we're working on them. And a story that is driven by expectations tends to be pretty dull. If the characters behave the way we expect, why are we reading? We like it when characters stretch, when they grow, when they push back against these presumptions, assumptions, and judgments. So that's what we're talking about today. So remember, we're talking about characters. So we bring to our writing our beliefs, and then our characters develop these beliefs as we're writing them, and we make conscious and unconscious choices about this regarding all the different stereotype issues with skin color, with geographic conflicts, somebody coming from the wrong part of town or the good part of town. We also have issues with ageisms and many, many other judgments. So let's look at a few of these, and I'll share with you what we talked about at our workshop. We talked about the concept, the stereotype of an old man. Now, many people suggested that when you think about an old man, the stereotype is they're inflexible in mind as well as in body. They're not as physically active. That they tend to be set in their ways. But some people also said they're often more active. They're also, wiser. You expect an old man to have great experience and wisdom. So we had a lot of stereotypes. And then we talked about the counters. How do we counter that? Well, what about an old man at 80 years old learning how to skateboard and winning championships at 85? Who knows? Or somebody who's doing marathons at 70 years old decides to start, doing marathons and runs 30 of them in a year, whatever that is. That's a definite counter. But what about the belief that, that an old man is wiser and more experienced, than that his word should have greater value? What if your character, through the evolution of the process of writing your story, the reader finds out that your character is actually a little too fixed in their ideas, and they just wouldn't have a new thought if it caught on fire right in front of their face? Just wouldn't know. Find ways of countering those and allowing this old man character to grow and evolve. And maybe they go from very physical to not so physical, or, very wise to not so wise, or vice versa. Find ways of stretching that. White girl was quite the interesting discussion. In the United States, white girl was broken down into two key classifications, though there was a little pitch for the New York white girl. So one of the stereotypes was the California white girl, who says between everything she says who just, the airhead California girl. You'll find everywhere, but the judgment is that those came out of California. And then you have the Southern white girl. It's interesting. People love the Southern white girl and how they were just had that little drawl and just were a little too stupid, a little too dull, a little too cute. That's fascinating kind of a character. And then there was somebody who did vote for the New York style, the East Coast white girl who was all about the Gucci bag and about being wearing black and just being the hardest working and just achiever. Fascinating stereotypes to explore, fascinating characters to write about. And our European people had a little different judgment about white girl and often classified that as a United States thing and not so much of being a white girl in throughout Europe. That was fascinating. So we had all of our stereotypes and presumptions, assumptions, and judgments. Now, how do we counter it? And we had several great examples. For example, the Legal Blonde, which it was, the great movie of the ditzy Southern blonde girl, going off to get a law degree. Spawned, 3 movies or more? So it's a great character to counter those stereotypes and go against type. Also, the Closer, which is a TV show that ran in the U.S. for about, and also over and overseas, for about in 7 years, and it was in Atlanta. A police detective was brought in as a chief for a murder squad, who just talking the Southern talk and everything was thank you and just always so nice. And the first 2 seasons and beyond were spent trying to convince her coworkers and everyone else that she was the smartest person in the room, and you quickly learned she was. And that was a great, going against type. Great way to introduce that. But think about how you can do that in your own writing. Auto mechanic was a great discussion. Lot of stereotypes with this, and then how to counter them. So, that was the auto mechanics out to get you, is out to steal from you, make you pay for repairs you don't need. And then we had going against type was maybe the auto mechanic you find out through your story is someone who spends almost all their free time repairing the cars of poor people and the homeless and whatnot who that's all they're living in their cars, and they donate time and money and energy to helping to make their cars safe, and that's their mission in life. And the fact that you who have money comes in there, your character comes in there, may or may not know that what you paying that bill is helping to fund the good works that are being done. So a lot of ways to think about the auto mechanics and how, as a character, how that can be flipped around. Jobs carry a lot of stereotypes with them. So think about how you can counter those as you go into your character sketches and dive into those characters. The Southern husband and wife brought much discussion in our group. There's the stereotype that the Southern United States husband and wife are all Republican and they're all, anti-abortion and they're, very, very religious. And so countering that means you have a secular Southern husband and wife. There's many of them down there, of course, but maybe the character either evolves or shifts from that position, one political vision, belief system into another one. And there are also Democrats. There's everyone down in the South. But in your characters, how can you twist those around and have fun with those stereotypes and maybe have a Southern U.S. very religious husband and wife who actually are in favor of abortion? How can we push those things? Make your characters interesting. So we've just hit on a few in our workshop for you to think about and make a list of what are the stereotypes, what are those presumptions and assumptions and the judgments for that character's job, their skin color, where they grew up, where they're from, where they live now, whatever that is. Think about what all those are and then ways you can counter them and stretch your character. Because the writer needs to consider not only their own prejudice that they're injecting into the story, but also that of the characters. Make them matter, make them count. The characters need to evolve and grow, which is part of understanding what are the belief systems that your character walks out on the page with. Then how do we make them grow through that process. Maybe they don't. Maybe some they still cling to, but maybe others will help them change. It's your character. These stereotypes, this typecasting, these presumptions and assumptions, they create conflict, which adds to a bigger payoff often when you are writing and taking these into consideration, because they not only challenge your characters, but they often challenge the reader to shift around their presumptions, assumptions, their prejudice, their judgments, their stereotypes. Something to think about. So come join us on Altspace at altvr.com to get all the download information. It's a free app that you can visit us in virtual reality. We meet every Monday, and you can find more information at discord.me writing VR, and there's some great articles and tips in writersinthegrove.com. And we'd love to have you join us in Altspace.